Alright, hey everyone, Simon here, and we are in Assassin's Creed 3, and it's time to look at some architecture. So we finished playing the main game, we haven't played the DLC yet, but let's look at architecture. So there's two cities in the game, there's Boston and there's New York, back in the late 1700s. I don't know the history of colonial America as well as I do some other cities around the world. So I don't actually know the history of American cities that well. And the history of American cities are relatively short given that they are colonial, so a couple of hundred years. Um, Maybe I should talk about the timber buildings first. You notice that... Oh, shut up, bro. You'll notice that there's a lot of timber buildings and brick in comparison to some of the cities from the previous Assassin's Creed games, like Constantinople and Rome and Venice, where there's a lot of stone. The thing with timber is that it's cheap and easy. It doesn't last as long as stone, of course, because timber eventually rots. And you know, it's cheap and easy, and there's a lot of trees in the New World as well, given that it's been sparsely populated by Native Americans who don't really chop down that many trees. So there's a lot of timber in the New World. So timber is the easy choice for building material in the New World. Whereas, I mean, even in older cities in Europe, there's probably was a lot of timber buildings, but you know, when a city is like thousands of years old, you don't expect timber buildings to last thousands of years. So you end up with a lot of stone buildings that remain from those times, but not the timber buildings because they've been, you know, demolished a long time since. So, you know, in the archaeological record, there's a lot of stone ruins, but in reality, they would also have a lot of timber buildings, but we just don't know about them because they're gone. Anyway, enough rambling about that. Let's go look at Boston. What does the Animus database give us? I think it only... No, that's not it. I think the Animus database only gives us like specific locations. So we can go to like Boston. So there's kind of Beacon Hill, Boston Common. So there's kind of specific places, which is cool, but not the city itself. So let us begin by going to Wikipedia and just looking at the city itself and going through a bit of the history before we go into the specific buildings. So for context, Boston is the capital and largest city of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the United States. Boston also serves as blah blah blah. It's the capital of Massachusetts, basically. Let's see. An estimated population of 646,000 in 2014, making it the 24th largest city in the United States. 646,000 people is not that many people. You know, big cities in the world have multi-million, like population in the millions usually. So it's a, you know, on the grand scheme of things, it's a relatively small city. The city is the anchor of a substantially large... Oh, it's a city itself, my bad. The larger metropolitan area of Greater Boston is 4.5 million people. Okay, that's better. Oh, that's interesting. So the metropolitan area is 4.5 million, 10th largest metropolitan area in the country. But the city itself is only 646,000 people. So I guess that means that most of the people live in the suburbs, and the city center itself is not that densely populated, which is the case with a lot of American cities, to be honest. Alright, so 4.5 million is the Greater Boston metropolitan area. The Greater Boston is a commuting region. It's home to 7.6... Greater Boston as a commuting region is home to 7.6 million people, making it the 6th largest combined statistical area in the United States. So Greater Boston as a commuting region is home to 7.6 million people. Alright, so it's Greater Boston is quite large. But the city itself is only 646,000. Wow. Alright, well, not densely populated. One of the oldest cities in the United States, Boston was founded on the Shawmut Peninsula by Puritan colonists from England It was the scene of several key events in the American Revolution, such as the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party, the Battle of Bunker Hill, and the Siege of Boston. So we went through all of that in the game. So the game just took these historical events and just kind of put them into the game. Um, not entirely successfully, but we saw all of those. Upon American independence from Great Britain, the city continued to be an important port and manufacturing hub, as well as a center for education and culture. Though land reclamation and municipal annexation, or through land reclamation and municipal annexation, Boston has expanded beyond the original peninsula. Its rich history helps attract many tourists, with Faneuil Hall. What language is that? That's not. I don't know. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly. I might not be pronouncing that properly. Alone attracting over 20 million visitors. Boston's many firsts include United States' first public school, Boston Latin School, and first subway system. The area's many colleges and universities make Boston an international center of higher education and medicine, and the city is considered to be a world leader in innovation for a variety of reasons. Boston's economic base also includes finance, professional and business services, and government activities. The city has one of the highest costs of living in the United States, though it remains high on the world livability rankings. Alright, interesting. Huh. Colleges and universities. So the red is Boston itself. I want to get a view of Boston. Actually, let me just go to Google Maps. Let's go Boston. I find it curious that in the Wikipedia article they put the city first and then the metropolitan area last. If it were up to me, I would put the metropolitan area first and then the city last, just because, like the city boundaries might be small, but the cities function as an entity that includes the whole metropolitan area. Like if people commute into the city to work and then go back out to the suburbs at night, I mean you can't talk about the metropolitan area as separate things because it is not separate things. Like the whole thing is one city, So like this sort of thing, maybe it makes sense to planners, but it doesn't make sense in terms of understanding how people live in this place. You see what I mean? To understand how people live in this place, you have to take into account the entire inhabited area. Anyway, let's go back to this. So what was I doing? I was going to Google Maps. Just want to see it from the sky or from above. Let me go to. No, we want Earth. Here we go. So we are. So New York is down here. Manhattan is there. Up the coast from New York. Oops, did I go past it? Yep, my bad. Okay, so here's Boston. And there's a natural harbor here. Although there's been some land reclamation, you can see the straight lines. That's indicative of reclaimed land. And then the city of Boston itself, the part we see in the game. Is it just this? Hold on. Let me look at the map here. What are we looking at? Oh, wow, we really... Wait a minute. What are we looking at here? I don't even recognize what the shape of the land. It's been reclaimed, right? So there's that, but that's quite narrow there, isn't it? So there's that. Does that mean all of this is... Oh, I guess all of this is reclaimed. So, and it's... In the game, this is quite narrow too. What's that? What does that mean? Does that mean all of this is reclaimed? That's crazy. It must be the waterfront park. See all these straight lines there. Is all of this reclaimed? Hanover Street. Alright, we'll find out. We'll find out pretty soon. Massive highway there. Government Center. Boston Common. Public Garden. Beacon Hill. Alright, so that's what it looks like from the air. So the city center is right there. But you know, as you can see, the actual metropolitan area is all the way around there, right? So there's kind of no point just talking about this, oh, this is your city. No, because this is the city, like the whole thing is the city. Anyway, the airport is there. Alright, so I think I understand what's going on now. Wow, we're only looking at a very small part of it. Okay, let's go back to Wikipedia. History. The history of Boston? Do we need to go through the long history? No, I think that's enough there. Alright. Boston's early European... Oh, here's a historical map. Let me just look at this first. So there's a historical map of Boston. Where's north? North is that way. The town of Boston. Curious. Because that's not really the shape of Boston here. I guess it's been rotated a bit. Okay, I see what's happened. The map in Assassin's Creed has been rotated a little bit. Like that is pointing there, whereas this is pointing straight across there, so it's not quite right in the game. Or maybe north is off in this map. Who knows? It could be that this is wrong. Alright, so this matches this historical map quite well. And I haven't actually uncovered the whole map around here. Oops. Whereas this thing... Are we even looking at the same city? There must have been so much reclamation. Wow. It looks nothing like this now. That's crazy. How much land did they reclaim? Oops. No, don't do that. How much... New England Aquarium... Yeah, they've reclaimed so much land. That's crazy. Alright. Boston's early European settlers had first called the area Trimontaine after its three mountains, only traces of which remain today, but later renamed it Boston after Boston, Lincolnshire, England, from which several prominent colonists had come. So they go to another part of the world and name it after the place they came from. I thought the whole point of you leaving Boston, Lincolnshire is to go somewhere else. But after going somewhere else, you call it Boston as well, so that's a bit weird, but okay. So they named it after a place in England. The renaming on September 7th, 1630, Old Style, was by Puritan colonists from England who had moved over from Charleston earlier that year in quest of fresh water. Their settlement was initially limited to the Shawmut Peninsula, at that time surrounded by the Massachusetts Bay and Charles River, and connected to the mainland by a narrow isthmus. The peninsula is known to have been inhabited as early as 5000 BC. Well, it's a natural fortress, right? Because it's surrounded by water with a narrow piece of land connecting it to the rest of the land. So I guess it's easily defensible, although it's also easily besieged. In 1629, the Massachusetts Bay Colony's first governor, John Winthrop, led the signing of the Cambridge Agreement, a key founding document of the city. Puritan ethics and their focus on education influenced its early history. America's first public school was founded in Boston in 1635. Over the next 130 years, the city participated in four French and Indian Wars until the British defeated the French and their native allies in North America. Boston was the largest town in British North America until Philadelphia grew larger in the mid-18th century. Interesting. So for a long time, Boston was the biggest city in British North America. Many of the crucial events of the American Revolution, the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party, Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, uh, the battles of Lexington and Concord and Bunker Hill, the Siege of Boston, and many others occurred in or near Boston. After the Revolution, Boston's long seafaring tradition helped make it one of the world's wealthiest international ports, with rum, fish, salt, and tobacco being particularly important. So, again, we see that the port cities are quite important, and because of their function as a center of trade, Boston became very wealthy, as you can see. So, all the stuff that's being produced in the inland areas of the United States would be transported to here to be shipped over to Europe for sale, right? The Embargo Act of 1807, adopted during the Napoleonic Wars and the War of 1812, significantly curtailed Boston's harbor activity. Although foreign trade returned after these hostilities, Boston's merchants had found alternatives for their capital investments in the interim. Manufacturing became an important component of the city's economy, and by the mid-19th century, the city's industrial manufacturing overtook international trade in economic importance. Until the early 20th century, Boston remained one of the nation's largest manufacturing centers and was notable for its garment production and leather good industries. Ooh, leather good industries they they create a lot of pollution. Leather working. A network of small rivers bordering the city and connecting it to the surrounding region facilitated shipment of goods and led to a proliferation of mills and factories. Later, a dense network of railroads furthered the region's industry and commerce. A network of small rivers bordering the city and connecting it to the surrounding region. Yeah, so they use so there's kind of like natural waterways between the Boston and the surrounding areas. Why does Google Maps still keeps refreshing like that? So you see there's like all these kind of rivers everywhere. So that they would kind of set up factories along the rivers and then use ships to transport the goods to Boston, right? Which is quite convenient. During this period, Boston flourished culturally as well, admired for its rarefied literary life and generous artistic patronage. So with money comes art and literature and education. With members of old Boston families eventually dubbed Boston Brahmins, coming to be regarded as the nation's social and cultural elite. Boston also became a center of the abolitionist movement. The city reacted strongly to the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, contributing to President Franklin Pierce's attempt to make an example of Boston after the Anthony Burns fugitive slave case. Not familiar with that. In 1822, the citizens of Boston voted to change the official name from the town of Boston to the city of Boston. And on March 4th, 1822, the people of Boston accepted the charter incorporating the city. At the time Boston was chartered as a city, the population was about 46,226, while the area of the city was only 4.7 square miles. In the 1820s, Boston's population grew rapidly, and the city's ethnic composition changed dramatically with the first wave of European immigrants. Irish immigrants dominated the first wave of newcomers during this period, especially following the Irish potato famine. By 1850, about 35,000 Irish lived in Boston. In the latter half of the 19th century, the city saw increasing numbers of Irish, German, Lebanese, Syrians, French Canadians, and Russians and Polish Jews settled in the city. By the end of the 19th century, Boston's core neighborhoods had become enclaves of ethnically distinct immigrants. Italians inhabited the North End, Irish dominated South Boston and Charleston, and Russian Jews lived in the West End. Irish and Italian immigrants brought with them Roman Catholicism. Currently, Catholics make up Boston's largest religious community, and since the early 20th century, the Irish have played a major role in Boston politics. Prominent figures include the Kennedys, Tip O'Neill, and John Fitzgerald. Between 1631 and 1890, the city tripled its area through land reclamation by filling in marshes, mudflats, and gaps between wharves along the waterfront. Tripled. The city area tripled. Alright, so that's why it turned from this to this. So none of this today is natural. All of it is reclaimed. That is crazy. Oh well, I guess you gotta do what you gotta do, right? The largest reclamation efforts took place during the 19th century. Beginning in 1807, the crown of Beacon Hill was used to fill in a 50-acre mill pond that later became the Haymarket Square area. Alright, so Beacon Hill used to be taller than this now. The present-day State House sits atop this lowered Beacon Hill. Reclamation projects in the middle of the century created significant parts of the South End, the West End, the Financial District, and Chinatown. After the Great Boston Fire of 1872, workers used building rubble as landfill along the downtown waterfront. During the mid to late 19th century, workers filled almost 600 acres of brackish Charles River marshlands west of the Boston Common, with gravel brought by rail from the hills of Needham Heights. The city annexed the adjacent towns of South Boston, East Boston, Roxbury, Dorchester, Brighton, West Roxbury, Charlestown, and Hyde Park. Other proposals for the annexation of Brookline, Cambridge, and Chelsea were unsuccessful. So it expanded. So along with the immigrants from Europe, the area of the city greatly expanded during this time. By the early and mid-20th century, the city was in decline as factories became old and obsolete, and businesses moved out of the region for cheaper labor elsewhere. This is a major issue with a lot of American cities, is that there's this kind of just use and abandon mentality. Like you see it in American history a lot. Like, for example, here, they built the factories, everything was going well, and then things started getting old. And instead of rebuilding the factories or kind of converting the city to something else, people just leave. They just pack up and move somewhere else, which is really weird. But the thing is, of course, America has always been sparsely populated, in comparison to Asia or Europe, and even now it's very sparsely populated in comparison. And so there's a lot of space, and it costs more money to rebuild the factory than to just build a new one somewhere else. But then it's not good for cities, and it's not good socially, because there's a lot of kind of disruption, because usually it's the rich people who can afford to just leave, and then they just leave the poor people behind. And that's not it's not good socially. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that for now. But Detroit is a major problem because of that. And it's a really big example, because Detroit used to be in car manufacturing, right? The auto industry was based in Detroit, and then at some point, they just moved out, and now Detroit is bankrupt. It's still bankrupt. The rich people left, and then the poor people got left behind, and the city just collapsed, and it's still bankrupt, and it still hasn't recovered really. And so it's just, I don't know. Why would you? It's not a good way to use your resources, I feel like. Anyway, Boston responded by initiating various urban renewal projects under direction of Boston Redevelopment Authority, which was established in 1957. In 1958, BRA initiated a project to improve the historic West End neighborhood. Extensive demolition was met with vociferous public opposition, the BRA subsequently re-evaluated its approach to urban renewal in its future projects, including the construction of Government Center. So the redevelopment efforts didn't really help because they would demolish. Again, they would tend to demolish all the homes of poor people, and they try to build new buildings, which is not really how you help a city. Anyway, in 1965, the first community health center in the United States opened, the Columbia Point Health Center in the Dorchester neighborhood. It mostly served the massive Columbia Point public housing complex adjoining it, which was built in 1953. The health center is still in operation and was rededicated in 1990 as the Geiger-Gibson Community Health Center. The Columbia Point complex itself was redeveloped and revitalized into a mixed-income community called Harbor Point Apartments from 1984 to 1990. By the 1970s, the city's economy boomed after 30 years of economic downturn. A large number of high-rises were constructed in the financial district and in Boston's Back Bay during this time period. So you see, like, there's a transition between manufacturing into financial services. Like, you see that. But in the middle, there was this kind of time of weirdness when people just ran away and then things got demolished and then rebuilt. So I guess they managed it okay in the end, unlike Detroit. But it's I don't know, it's a tough transition, away from manufacturing towards services. This boom continued into the mid-1980s and later began again. Hospitals such as the Massachusetts General Hospital, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, and Brigham and Women's Hospital. Brigham and Women's Hospital. Is women's a name or is it a women's hospital? I don't understand. Brigham and Women's Hospital led the nation in medical innovations and patient care. Well, I guess okay, the schools helped. So Boston was always a center for education, and that never changes, right? No matter what it is you do, manufacturing or services or anything, education always helps. Schools such as Boston College, Boston University, the Harvard Medical School, Northeastern University, Wentworth Institute of Technology, Berklee College of Music, and Boston Conservatory attract students to the area. Nevertheless, the city experienced conflict starting in 1974 over desegregation busing, which resulted in unrest and violence around public schools throughout the mid-1970s. Desegregation. Desegregation. How is that even a thing? Like, how is that even a problem? You can't sit next to a black person? How? That's anyway. Well, that's the history of America for you. That like you can't. Can you imagine? You can't like a white person can't sit next to a black person on a bus. And this is in the 1970s, and changing that led to violence. That is so insane. Boston is an intellectual, technological, and political center, but has lost some important regional institutions, including the acquisition of the Boston Globe by the New York Times, and the loss to mergers and acquisitions of local financial institutions, such as Fleet Boston Financial, which was acquired by Charlotte-based Bank of America in 2004. Boston-based department stores Jordan Marsh and Filene's have both been merged into the Cincinnati-based Macy's. Boston has experienced gentrification in the latter half of the 20th century, with housing prices increasing sharply since the 1990s. Gentrification is when the average wealth of an area increases. It doesn't mean that poor people become rich people. Usually it means the poor people are forced out of their homes because land prices increase and rich people buy their homes. And the poor people can't afford to live there anymore because everything becomes more expensive. So it's not the poor people becoming richer, it's the poor people being pushed out and then rich people moving in. That's gentrification. Living expenses have risen, and Boston has one of the highest cost of living in the United States, and was ranked in the 129th most expensive major city in the world in a 2011 survey of 214 cities. Wait a minute, 129th most expensive. That's like near the that's what that's below halfway. How is that? That's not too bad. Despite cost of living issues, Boston ranks high on livability ratings, ranking 36th worldwide in quality of living in 2011 in a survey of 221 major cities. Oh, Boston Marathon bombing. That's right. Alright, so there's that. That's the history of the city. So it was a pretty important city for a long time, but got overtaken, I guess, by other centers, although it remains an important center of education. Do we need to look at geography? Not really. It doesn't really say too much neither. Ooh, look, that's what it looks like now. It looks nothing like that in game. It looks absolutely nothing like that in game. Huh. Reflecting pool of the headquarters of the Church of Christ Scientist. That's not in the game neither. Climate? Continental climate? I don't think we need to look at that. Pollution. Demographics. Oh, interesting. So you can see where the rich people live and where the poor people live. That's cool. Let's look at this. Wow, less than $6.6 thousand. Was it a year? Alright, so the poor people live near the center. Rich people live in the suburbs, although there are some poor areas outside as well. There you go. Rich people live out in the suburbs, poor people live in the city center. Happens a lot in American cities. Alright, well, there you go. In 1950, whites represented 94.7% of Boston's population. From 1950s to the end of 20th century, the proportion of non-Hispanic whites in the city declined. Wait a minute, what? The proportion of... Oh, okay. In 2000, non-Hispanic whites made up 49.5% of the city's population, making the city majority-minority for the first time. However, in recent years, the city has experienced significant gentrification in which affluent whites have moved into formerly non-white areas. In 2006, the U.S. Census Bureau estimated that non-Hispanic whites again formed a slight majority. But as of 2010, in part due to the housing crash as well as increased efforts to make more affordable housing available, the minority population has rebounded. Alright. So white people have reduced in proportion. Black people have significantly increased along with Latinos. And Asians. Wow, Asians have dramatically increased. Mostly black and Asians. Native Americans slightly increased. Alright, well, there you go. Population changes. Do we need to look at all of that? No, not really. Ooh, this is interesting. Let's look at the distribution of the economy. This is all modern stuff. Like, this has got nothing to do with the game. But I'm just kind of interested in these statistics and data. Like, you can understand a lot about the city by looking at the numbers and the pictures. That's pretty cool. Boston City Hall. Let's see. 0% natural resources and mining. Trade, transport and utilities 17%, education, health and services 17%, professional and business services 16%. So remarkably, education is like the biggest thing, along with trade, transport and utilities. That's incredible. Education and health. Government is 12. Leisure, manufacturing, financial information, professional business and services. Wow, yeah, so Boston, yeah, so really education is the anchor of Boston's economy because education and health services kind of mixes into professional business and financial and information because you need the research and the highly educated people to be your professional services, right? So the professionals need to be educated. So these are like kind of like one thing leads to the other, right? Whereas manufacturing might be a different thing. That's interesting. All right, so that's all we have to say about the city of Boston from Wikipedia. Let's go back to the game and look up some of these landmarks. Keeping in mind that most of the things that we see in game don't exist in the real world anymore. Or do they? We'll see. Or rather, the real world Boston is quite different from what we see in game. Let's put it that way. Beacon Hill. Perhaps predictably, Beacon Hill gets its name because the Puritan settlers placed a beacon on the hilltop. Beacon here essentially means a bucket full of pitch hanging from a pole. The idea being it could be lit to warn the countryside if the town was attacked. Simple, effective, and never actually used. Good job. The hill is shorter today than it used to be. The top of it was carted off to fill in Mill Pond. This had the advantage of making the hilltop easier to build on and creating more land at Mill Pond, a two-for-one deal for developers. Beacon Hill became the place to live in Boston after the new Massachusetts State House opened here in 1790. Developers created upscale housing on the south side of the hill which overlooks the Boston Common. The north side of the hill had been settled earlier and was much less posh, sometimes going by the evocative nickname of Mount Whoredom. What a magical address! George Washington, ever the politician, would refer to it in one of his letters as Mount Horem, though that sounds more like an instruction than a place. Alright, so the north side is not as nice as the east side. Let me go find it. It's around here, here, or up here. I think it's up there. Let's go that way. Let's see if we can find the beacon again. I think we can still find the streets in Google Maps. I wonder how many of these buildings still exist. I guess most of the landmarks should. Not sure though. Also, I wonder if this city is full size. I don't know if they recreated the city in full scale for this game. I don't think so. I think the streets are still too narrow for this. And I don't know why Connor keeps parkouring on random things. I think the streets are too narrow for this to be full scale. Might be like half scale. Or even 2/3 scale. I'm not sure. We're going up a hill. Does that mean we're close to Beacon Hill? Here we go. Those are hills. I found some hills, guys, and you can see the beacon in the distance as well. So at some point, the government house was built around here. Must be after the events of the game, because at the moment there's really nothing on the hill. Well, there's the beacon, we can see it there. north side was called what? Mount Hordem? Well, there's really nothing around here at all. There's the beacon, a bucket of pitch on a pole, lit on fire if there was danger to the city, but okay, well, at this point, there's really not much around the hill, is there? Let's go further up. I might want to change the weather, because we don't really want to look at rain. That's not really good. Can I jump up? I can jump up, good. I can interact? Oh, never mind, I don't want to do that. Let me go to options and animus hack and weather always sunny, always daytime. Summer. Great. That should allow us to get. Oh no, why are we down here? Alright, let's go back up the hill. Or maybe not, maybe we don't really need to see the hill because there's really not much to see, is there? So in Google Maps, Beacon Hill is there. Although I'm not even sure it's a hill anymore. Yeah, so we don't. All of this is completely different. Massachusetts State House is there. Okay, I see. So in the game, that would be not here at all. I don't even recognize these roads. No, we don't even recognize the roads. Oh, it would be here, wouldn't it? Because it's rotated a bit. So Massachusetts State House is kind of where we're standing. Alright, so we don't see any of that. What else do we have to look at? Animus database, location, it's Boston. Boston Common. This has the honor of being the first public park in North America. It started off as the pasture of William Blackstone, or Blackstone if you prefer the original spelling, who despite his name was the first white settler in this area. When Boston started growing, Blackstone decided to move somewhere more remote. He sold the land to the growing city for £30, and they turned it into common land, hence the name. For the first century or two of Boston's history, this was a place to pasture your cows, no more than 70 at a time. Drill soldiers, the British regulars camped here, attend to the occasional public hanging for offences such as being a witch or being a Quaker, or perhaps simply taking a nice walk near all the cows and hanging. The British left the camp when they fled the city in 1776. Public hangings ended in 1817. The cows were banned in 1830. You can still take a walk there, but what's the point without the cows? Boston Commons? So it was a public park. Is it still a public park? Boston Common, it is. Still a public park. There's a frog pond, apparently. Public garden. Alright, so Boston Commons should be this way. Or that way, if I'm reading this right. Or is it that way? It's to the south of Beacon Hill. Wait a minute. Boston State House. I don't even know what I'm looking at even anymore. So Boston Common should be that way? Maybe it's behind these houses? Am I looking at this right? Yes, it should be south. Oh, there it is. There's the building. I mean, there's the What is that? Is that a granary? Oh, and there's where the British regulars camped. I don't know if they're still there in the game. I think no, they've gone. There's a few loyalists there. Alright, so this is Boston Common here. Not too interesting. I wonder if we should look this up in Wikipedia. Boston Common? Well, known as the Common, is a central public park in downtown Boston. Do I need to read this? Wow. Hanging for witchcraft. I don't think there's really much to say about this. Yeah, everything that needs to be said is already said in game. Not too interesting for us. Mostly just that it seems more hilly than it should be in the real world. Can we get like a? Oh, we can't get a street view or anything. Can we? Can I zoom in? How far can I zoom in? That's not really useful. Boston Common, Soldiers and Sailors Memorial. Just trying to look at the shape of this thing. Baseball field, tennis court. Is that the structure we're standing next to? I don't think so. In the game, it looks like that. It's kind of not like the real thing, is it? There's more trees in the real one. Although a lot has been changed, I guess, in the 200 years. Alright, well, that's not too interesting neither, it's just a patch of grass and some hills. Boston, bunch of grapes. This is one of the meeting places of the Sons of Liberty. The attraction of this particular tavern may have been the library, which included many anti-British books, or it might have been its reputation as the finest punch house in Boston, or it might even have been its location, which is right down the street from the old State House, where the legislature met, and where the Boston Massacre occurred, or it might have been Darts Night. While I'd love to use the fact that the Patriots met in taverns to imply all kinds of things about them, I should point out that taverns were places to do business as well as to drink, and that alcohol was viewed as more or less the cure for all ills. Alright, well, Bunch of Grapes is the meeting place of the Sons of Liberty. Can I type it in here? Bunch of Grapes? Bunch of Grapes bookstore. I don't think that's what we're looking for. No, that's definitely not what we're looking for. Wow, where are we? We are somewhere else. Alright, so Bunch of Grapes. We're not gonna find it on the map. Bunch of Grapes? I don't think we'll find it in Wikipedia neither. Or we will. Tavern located on King Street in Boston, Massachusetts. Brief history, notable events. The first Grand Lodge of Masons in America was organized here. Let's try and find it in game. I mean, it's one of those things where the building is not so important as the events that occurred. I mean, it's really just a tavern. Is there located on King Street in Boston? King Street? Boston? That's not Wait a minute, what? That's not right. State Street? State Street, Massachusetts. Okay, come on, Google Maps. Come on, Google Maps, this is not helping us. Don't glitch out. Don't glitch out. Okay, this is not really helping us because I can't find this thing. It did say that it was... I mean, it must not be too far from here, right? Let me just sort of mark it there so we can find it again. We have seen it in game, it's just a brick building as a tavern. Nothing too... Why would you do that? You're literally not even looking at the horse. Yeah, the buildings are not all that remarkable. I've kind of talked about bricks before when we were playing the game. The good thing about bricks is that it's modular. So, you know, you just kind of... You cast all the bricks in the same mold and you create a lot of pieces that are the same size, and then you just kind of put them together the way you put together building blocks. So bricks are useful as a building material because of that. Oh look, a stone building, interesting. A stone brick building. So that would have been more expensive, because stone, you have to cut the pieces of stone into shape, whereas the bricks are cast into shape. So stone is more expensive than brick, and I guess brick is more expensive than wood. Is that the old state house? Or is that something else? What is this, and what are we looking at?
You go too far. Stop it.
What is this, and what are we looking at? Oh, let's see. George Smith Blacksmith Shop. Is this the bunch of grapes? This building here, or am I looking at the wrong thing? Can you please not park more for once? What? Oh, here it is, bunch of grapes. There you go. You can see the that thing next to the door, which is that sign of the bunch of grapes. We can't go inside though. That's a shame. A tavern located on King Street in Boston. Typical of taverns of its time, it served multiple functions in the life of the town. One could buy drinks, concert tickets, slaves, meet friends, business associates, political conspirators. Located in the center of town activity, the facade of the bunch of grapes buildings featured iconic signage. 3 gilded clusters of grapes dangled temptingly over the door before the eye of the passerby. You could buy slaves in the tavern. Interesting. Notable events occurred on tavern premises. On Monday, July 30th, 1733, the first Grand Lodge of the Masons in America was organized here by Henry Price, a Boston tailor who had received authority from Lord Montague, Grand Master of England, for the purpose. In 1769, the tavern offered tickets for sale for Love in the Village, the first professional opera performance in Boston. Arthur Christian Remick displayed his paintings in the tavern in 1769. A darker chapter in the tavern's history involves slavery. For potential buyers, a search for slave labor in Boston began and ended along the bustling King Street corridor that connected the warehouses of Long Wharf to the commercial center of the town. 3 of Boston's busiest public houses, the Royal Exchange, the Crown Coffee House, and the Bunch of Grapes Tavern, lined that half-mile stretch. All offered fine drink and lively conversation, and at times all served as clearinghouses for slaves. In the Revolutionary era, the bunch of grapes became the resort of the high Whigs, who made it a sort of political headquarters in which patriotism only passed current, and it was known as the Whig Tavern. Alright, so we don't really need to read too much about the rest of it. I'm more interested in the market, actually. So this is the market they were talking about. And so there's the wharves there, and I guess the slaves would be unloaded from the ships, and then they'd be sold nearby, like here, and I guess other goods would also be sold around here in the market. So that's quite convenient, actually. You know, having the port right there, and then the market right next to the port. That makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, that included slaves, because slaves were traded in America for a long time. But here's the king's crown. So the king's crown was mentioned here, right? Or maybe not. Royal Exchange Crown Coffee House. Maybe it was. Do we have a Royal Exchange? Is that... What is this? Grocery, oysters, coffee, pie and cake, cigars and tea. That's not really that's not it, is it? Anyway, so there's the grapes. All right, let's go look at the next building. Locations: Boston Crown Coffee House. The name of this place is somewhat misleading. It's likely that this coffee house sold more wine than coffee, since coffee was only just becoming popular. I know it's hard to imagine a time when people didn't enjoy their morning cup, but there you are. If we go by the number of bottles they had in stock, this was one of the busiest taverns in Boston, likely because of its location. If you were arriving in Boston by ship in the 1700s, and let's face it, you didn't fly in, this would have been the first tavern you saw. And since taverns were great places to get information, you might well have stopped here for a drink and the latest news. So in the game, it's a timber building. Is it this one? No, it's a blacksmith shop. Crown Coffee House? Crown Coffee House? I don't see that one. Is it that one there? Is it that? Is it this? What is this? That is the Crown Coffee House. Alright, there's the Crown Coffee House right there. Maybe I should look. Maybe I should look this up in the on Google Maps. If I can like reload this, because it has crashed, kind of. So State Street is there, right? So, wow, this is not doing well. State Street is there. Marriott's Custom House. I'm not sure any of those things exist anymore. The Place, Harborside Inn, Black Rose, Bostonia Public House, the Bar Room. I know. Alright, is that the... That's the Old State House. It is... Okay, so this is the Old State House. The market used to be on this street, which means that the bunch of grapes should be somewhere around here, and the Crown Cafe or Coffee House should be around here if this stuff is reclaimed. Alright, so none of that exists anymore. That's a real shame. Crown Coffee House? No, there's no... Yeah, no, there's no Crown Coffee House in Wikipedia. Alright, next one. Anyway, let me just actually, before we do that, A timber building. I wonder if they actually had pictures of these things. They might have had pictures of these things before they were demolished. I wouldn't know. Actually, it looks pretty. Look at these broken windows. Why would there be broken windows everywhere? It's not very well maintained, is it?